Hello, and welcome back to Over My Dead Pod. I'm Kylie Colwell.
This is Kate Carter.
And I'm Holly Spear.
Today, I'm bringing you all a very confusing cold case with a bunch of different theories and conspiracies. You love them. This is the disappearance of Leah Roberts. Leah Toby Roberts was born on July 23rd, 1976, in Durham, North Carolina, to parents Nancy and Stansel. Leah grew up right there in Durham, living a chill and happy life as the youngest sibling with her older sister Kara and brother Heath. I couldn't find much about Leah's life prior to her going to college, but I do know that she was super close to her siblings who play a big role in advocating for her case. It's no wonder they're all so close because the siblings have been through it. When Leah was 17, her dad Stansel was diagnosed with chronic lung disease. A short time later, her mom Nancy developed heart disease, likely from all of the stress. The family stuck together through all of this, and that's probably why Leah decided to go to college basically right in their backyard. In 1995, Leah began her freshman year at NC State in Raleigh, which for those who don't know is basically down the street from Durham. She double majored in Spanish and anthropology. Some sources say she played soccer in college, but I couldn't find her on like any of the school's team information. So I
She
don't
might have
know.
played club.
That's what I was thinking. Or if she
Yeah.
played like recreational, don't know. But this is like before teams really updated their information on the internet. But things were going well. She was keeping up with all the work of a double major and still managed to have a social life and spend time with her family. Things continued to go well until Leah's sophomore year in 1997 when her mom died suddenly from the heart disease. Leah ended up taking a semester off in order to spend more time with her family and basically just to take a step back to grieve. She started taking classes again in the fall of 98 when another disaster struck. Leah was in a near fatal car accident, landing her in the hospital for quite a while. She had punctured a lung, shattered a femur, and had many other injuries. Her femur fracture was so bad that surgeons had to place a metal rod in her leg. Important note to remember. But all of this didn't really seem to faze Leah or her outlook on life. It was kind of like a near death reawakening that some people have. Like she told her sister that she felt born again. She poured herself back into studying and took up a bunch of hobbies that brought her joy, like hiking and reading. She wanted to open up her life, travel more, and be just the free spirit that she was. When an opportunity came up to attend a work study program in Costa Rica, she was all over it. It was not only going to be educational, but also a free vacation. But then another tragedy struck. Only 3 weeks before she was going to board the plane, her dad died. So now it's 1999. Leah is only 23 years old and she has lost both of her parents.
That's so devastating.
I don't know what I would do.
Part of that, I know people who have like lost their parents, and I'm like, I mean, we're older now too, and I still cannot imagine.
And to lose
No,
both of them so soon, that's just, yeah, that's hard.
but Leah's strong. She decided she was going to go on ahead to Costa Rica. It would be even more beneficial for her soul and her grieving. Before she left, she had the smart idea of making her older sister Kara her power of attorney, just in case something happened while she was out of the country. This gave Kara the ability to access her bank account, among many other things, which is another important note to remember. The trip went really well. She went with her roommate, Nicole Bennett, and another friend. Nicole said that Leah seemed to be really well, didn't even see her cry once. Leah kept on trucking on with school and life, finishing out that spring semester and then next fall's. And then, out of basically nowhere to everyone around her, Leah dropped out of school only 3 months before graduating.
Dang.
Her siblings and friends tried to talk her out of it, like, you're so close to finishing. Like, it's been a long journey, just power through it. But from what I gathered, it wasn't like, oh, I can't go on, I can't finish school. She just kind of realized it's not for me what I want to do with my life. College isn't what I need, type of thing.
Yeah, but she was almost done.
I know, I don't know. She just wanted to travel and write poetry, more of a hippie, off the grid life. She learned how to play guitar and she got into photography. She spent a lot of her time reading and writing poetry at a local coffee house called Cup of Joe with others. Leo is also a really big fan of Jack Kerouac, a beatnik novelist whose work revolved around traveling to find enlightenment. Another hint to remember for later. Most importantly, to me at least, she adopted a little kitten named Bia. I tried to find a picture of this cat for so long, could not
I
find
was
one.
I was gonna say your PowerPoint does not have the cat on it.
I tried. But back to the story. It's now March of 2000. Leah dropped out a monthish prior and is just doing whatever her heart desires. I'm not sure if she had a job or not, but we do know she got some money from her parents' estate, so it's possible she was living off of that. On the morning of March 9th, Leah talked on the phone with her sister Kara like they did most days. The conversation was pretty normal, lighthearted, nothing out of the norm. In the early afternoon of the same day, Leah hung out a bit with her roommate, Nicole, and she agreed to join her for a babysitting gig the next day, Friday. Leah went about the rest of her day, and Nicole headed off for work. When Nicole got home later that night, she noticed Leah and her 1993 white Jeep Cherokee were gone, but she didn't think much of it. Leah didn't have a set schedule since dropping out, and she would occasionally just go off, whether out with friends or to the coffee house. Nicole wasn't even concerned the next day when Leah didn't show up to the babysitting gig. It was kind of the norm for Leah to bounce and for the roommates to not see each other for a few days. But by the 12th, 3 days after seeing her, Nicole was like, okay, this is weird. And mind you, this is the year 2000. Leah did not have a cell phone, so she couldn't just call her and check on her or be like, where are you at? So Nicole called her sister Kara and was like, hey, have you heard from her? Kara was like, no. And I was just thinking, that's kind of weird. So they both ended up just calling everyone they can think of to see if they had heard from Leah. No one had. On the 13th, after calling everyone, Kara was certain that something was wrong, and she reported her sister missing to the Durham police. I'm not sure what investigating police did, if any. There wasn't much news coverage of this case, especially at this point with this department, but I wouldn't be surprised if they just took down the report and be like, okay, we'll just wait for her to come back. Either way, Kara and Nicole decided to go through Leah's room since apparently the police did not. The room was pretty close to its normal state, but clothes and bags were missing. Other clothes were on the floor, so it kind of looked like someone had been packing. Other things not in the room were Leah's purse, wallet, ID, keys, and most importantly, the cat and all of the cat's things. It was pretty evident that Lee had packed up suddenly and left, but why? One clue was found hidden in a dresser drawer. Kara found a crumpled note. Reports vary exactly on what the note said. I did find like one picture, but I'm not sure if it is of the actual note because it's from like a TV show. So not super reliable. But all the reports say that on one part of the note, it said, quote, I'm not suicidal. I am the opposite. Remember Jack Kerouac, end quote. The note also had a little drawing of the Cheshire Cat's smile from Alice in Wonderland.
Ominous.
Yeah, that kind of creeps me out though. I'm not gonna lie.
So we don't know what the note said, but we're sure that it said something about her not being suicidal and to remember this person.
Yes.
Okay.
And people read into this creepy ass cat who still scares me to this day.
Yes.
In Alice in Wonderland, he just like appears and disappears. So people kind of read into maybe that's why she put it down on the paper.
Yeah.
Maybe she just loves cats. I don't know.
I wonder if like, and you may talk about this later, if she's like a doodler or like a drawer, like I feel like her family would know, you know?
Yeah, she does seem artsy.
Yeah. Like if this is something that maybe she just like doodled on the paper, or if that was unlike her, maybe it actually does mean something.
I did include the picture of the note I did find on the PowerPoint, and it looks like there's a bunch of other stuff on it. Like it's like a scrap piece of paper.
Okay.
So I don't know if that was like already there or if it was like intentionally put there for that note. But along with this note was a bundle of cash. Kara said enough to cover a month's worth of rent and expenses. I don't doubt that it was Leah who packed up, wrote the note, left the cash. But it's weird that this was hidden in a dresser drawer, like under clothes.
Right.
Like she wanted these things to be found.
Why would the note be hidden?
Yeah. So weird.
So the roommate, Nicole, they talk, whatever. Nicole goes to work. Leah packs up, leaves all this note and stuff. I don't know why she wouldn't just like put it on the kitchen counter or something for Nicole to find.
Also, like, I don't know where this story is going because I've never heard of this before, but how I feel like it's going, if she was planning on leaving, going somewhere, if I was planning on coming back, I don't know if I would care if my month's rent was covered.
If I was coming back, I'd be worried that my roommate would be mad at me for not paying my month's rent.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
But if I was gonna leave and not come home, and I was gonna take, the belongings I wanted and leave, and start a new life, whatever. I don't think
Yeah.
I wouldn't care about my last month's rent. I think I would only do that if I knew I was coming back. I didn't want people to be mad at me. I didn't want to feel the
Yeah,
repercussions of that.
I agree.
Yeah, that's a good point. So she like kind of left this little scavenger hunt, but Kara was ready to take it on. And she remembered that she was Leah's power of attorney, so she pulled up her bank account to try and figure out where she was. The records showed that around 6 p.m. on the 9th, the day she was last seen, Leah withdrew $3,000 from the bank. I don't know what time Nicole left for work, but I do know this was after Nicole had left. So between the time of her agreeing to go on this babysitting gig and Nicole leaving, she decided to just up and leave. Bank account also showed that on the night of the 10th, the next night, she paid for a hotel room in Memphis, Tennessee. The transactions followed along Interstate 40 across the entire country with stops for food and gas. The financial trail kept going north on Interstate 5 once Leah got to California. The last activity on Leah's debit card was shortly after midnight on March 13th at a gas station in Brooks, Oregon. Leah got gas and picked up a few things from inside the station. According to Kara, the security footage inside showed a normal transaction, but Leah kept peering out the window towards the parking lot while checking out. There weren't any cameras outside, so we don't know what she was looking at. Could be another person, could just be her checking on the cat that is assumingly still in the car. Either way, the last time Leah used her debit card was the same day she was reported missing. She drove over 3,000 miles from North Carolina to Oregon in 4 days. Kara kept checking the bank account for more transactions, but nothing came up and the days kept going. On the 19th, Kara sat around her house waiting for a phone call because that was Kara's birthday and Leah would have definitely called. No matter where she was or what she was doing, she would have called. Instead, Kara got a knock on the door from the Durham police. And get this, they didn't even wait for her to answer the door. They left a note on her door and scurried off.
Odd. I've never
Yeah, that's
heard
weird.
thing.
Kara read the note, which only said to call a police department in Washington state. So she did, and they had an update. They found Leah's car.
In Washington State.
Yes.
That's a long drive.
On the 18th, a couple jogging on a logging road near North Cascades National Park followed a weird trail of clothes tied to tree limbs to find a white Jeep Cherokee crashed off an embankment. They checked it out, and there was no one inside, but they called it into police anyways. For context, this national park is pretty close to the Canadian border on the western coast of the state, and about a 5-hour drive from the gas station where Leah stopped. Police arrived at the car and saw the North Carolina license plate, and at this point, they just assumed it was like a drunk person that ran off the road. But they ran the license plate, they called the Durham police, and Durham was like, "Oh yeah, she's missing. It's your case now." Which may not have been a bad thing because they suck.
Yeah. Good.
But that's also real shit.
Yeah.
I never understand that.
No. Back to the scene, the car had gone off the road and down this very steep embankment, landing straight up on its wheels, but heavily covered by the trees and bushes. Windows were busted, things were strewn about everywhere. Investigators determined that the car was going about 40 miles per hour when it went off the road, and it rolled several times. The thing is, there was zero sign of someone being in the car when it crashed. There's no blood, no sign of anyone hitting their head on the windshield. The seatbelt wasn't stretched out like it would be in that sort of situation. There weren't any foot or shoe prints around the car, a sign that maybe if someone did survive, they didn't walk off. So the car mysteriously drove itself off of the road somehow. There wasn't anything holding down the gas pedal or tying the steering wheel to go in a specific direction, since I know that was your next question.
It was. I was just about to say, so what was on the gas pedal?
Yeah.
Was it in neutral?
They never released exactly where the car was found. I do know it was like off an embankment, and they said it was pretty steep down.
Yeah. Okay. So someone put it in neutral.
It was going 40 miles per hour before it went off the edge.
Had to have been going downhill. I'm thinking things. Doesn't mean it's true, but
What's weird, or even more weird about the car, is that there were pillows and blankets like latched into the doors, covering was the windows. So it looked like someone had been using it as a shelter after the crash.
Taking a blanket and covering up the windows.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no one was in the car when it crashed, and there was no foot or shoe prints outside of the car.
Why do they think that it was used after the crash and not before?
I guess because it would be hard to drive the car with all the windows covered.
Well, I don't think anybody was in the car.
Well, or maybe that is the reason why she,
Went off the road.
yeah, she was trying to drive with the windows covered.
But inside the car, police found the cat carrier, cat food, clothes, jewelry, $2,400 in cash, which was stuffed into a pair of pants pockets. And a little memento box was a receipt from the gas station in Oregon and a movie ticket stub from the 13th. Near the car, they found more clothes, Leah's passport, checkbook, driver's license, guitar, and some CDs. So police were completely dumbfounded as to what the hell happened here and saying because it doesn't make any sense. One thing under the floor mat made this even more confusing. Police found a ring that Kara identified as their mother's engagement ring. Leah wore this ring 24/7, didn't even take it off when she went to sleep or showered, and Kara is very adamant that under no circumstance would Leah willingly leave that behind. Leah and our cat were nowhere to be found. Days went by without another clue, which leads us to our first theory, the first being that Leah was in fact in the car when it crashed. To sum up this theory, Leah was driving on this road headed towards Desolation Peak when she lost control and went into the embankment. The big red flag in this theory is that police are very adamant that no one was in the car when it crashed. One thing that could explain this is if she had pulled over, maybe was working on the car for some reason. I don't know, something happened, cut the wrong wire, it drove off the road. But that doesn't really explain where she went and why she didn't take her things out of the car. But somehow, if she was in the car, and police are wrong about this fact, and she did survive, she most likely would have had a concussion, possibly brain damage, might have waited out in the car for a bit, hence covering the windows before wandering off. So I think this kind of makes sense. If you remember, there were clothes tied, like leading to the car, kind of like marking where to come back to. But I don't know if you have like brain damage and you're concussed, like, would you even think to do that? But
No.
not take like all of your money in jewelry and stuff?
This is so weird.
Sad thing that people mention or conclude is that the cat apparently was like a small kitten at the time, and they say it most likely would not have survived the crash. So where is the freaking cat? If Leah was in the car and survived, there's endless possibilities as to what happened after the crash and where she went to. Another theory I've seen pop up is that Leah, in a concussed state, walked off, probably with the cat, and encountered a predator, either an animal or a bad person. Maybe she is out there alive, but has a bad case of amnesia and doesn't even know she is missing. So I looked into this. There was this guy, James McDonald, who had some head trauma. He lived in New York, somehow made his way down to Philadelphia. He lived for 15 years under a different name, not knowing who he was, until
Wow.
all of a sudden he had another head trauma and suddenly remembered about his whole life and family back in New York.
That's bonkers.
Yeah. And then there's this guy, Benjamin Kyle, who was found in a Burger King parking lot naked in Georgia in 2004. He had no idea who he was, no form of identification, kind of just gave himself the name Benjamin Kyle. And they didn't identify him as William Powell until 2015 with DNA
I remember
testing.
that story.
It's weird. And there's
Yeah.
so many. I like looked up some examples and I had to like pick two because apparently it happens. Is it too out there to assume she's just like has amnesia?
I don't think she was in the car. I think she was taken.
I would totally buy she's in a car crash, she has amnesia, she goes and she lives a different life. I would get like totally get that. This everything put together, taken like all together is too weird for me. The note, the money, her taking money out of her bank account, the clothes afterwards, the note, everything it's all too much for me to think that like that could all just happen by accident. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's too weird altogether.
It's too weird altogether. Like one strange thing I could deal with, but
Like, are you meaning that you think all of this is on purpose?
I don't know. I don't know what I think yet, but I think that it's definitely not just a car crash with getting amnesia. There's just too many things leading up to it.
So investigators did originally work under the assumption that Leah was nearby and began searching miles in each direction around the car. The FBI was even brought in since Leah crossed state lines. They searched with dogs, helicopters, and even metal detectors since Leah had that metal rod in her leg, but nothing came up. While these ground searches were going on, Kara and her brother Heath arrived in Washington to help. Kara went back through their bank records to piece together a timeline, which was pretty difficult. Leah used mainly cash, and because she didn't have a cell phone, there wasn't any kind of GPS that could be used. Kara did have one thing, and that was the movie ticket stub found in the car. And guys, Kara's quite the detective. She went straight to the movie theater that was in Bellingham, which is on the west end of the highway where the car was found. So the movie theater's like in the mall, and attached to the mall was this little diner called Elephant and Castle. And Kara was like, oh, this is definitely a place Leah would go to for lunch before the movie. And she went in, she asked around, and she was right. Leah did have lunch there.
Interesting.
I'm loving the sister.
Me too. So employees and some of the regulars confirmed she had lunch there on the 13th, and her movie started at 2:10. So Leah kind of stood out with her strong Southern accent. That's why people remembered her. Police ended up going down this tip, and they tracked down two men that sat on either side of Leah at the counter. Guy number one said she was there alone, very normal situation. Guy number two, on the other hand, had some more information to provide. Guy number two said that they talked about her road trip, and Leah talked about Jack Kerouac, something that hadn't been in the press, so this definitely confirmed it was Leah. Guy number two said that Leah left the diner with another man, who she had called Barry. He described Barry as a white, late 20s to early 30s-year-old man with a gauge in his right ear. I sent you guys a little sketch of it, but I don't know, he just looks like a white man, very structured face,
Yeah.
short hair,
Okay,
good
Barry.
good cheekbones and jawline.
They're popping. I
Yeah.
see you, Barry.
But police handed out the sketch to people and put it in the media, but no one recognized him.
No cameras, I assume.
Nope. And no one in the diner remembered seeing him. Even more weird, guy number one was very adamant that there was no third man, and Leah definitely left alone. So this was kind of a dead end for now.
Okay, so the second guy did something. He's coming up with the story.
We'll come back to guy number two. But I think it's time to dive into this Jack Kerouac theory that Leah seemingly followed the plot of this book called The Dharma Bums. In the novel, the main character, Ray, is given prayer beads from a friend and is inspired to backpack across the US in search of enlightenment as he gets into Buddhism. At one point in the book, Ray travels to his mom's house in North Carolina for Christmas, where he had a vision of a cure for her illness. Sound familiar? At the end, Ray spends the summer as a fire lookout on Desolation Peak, where he meditates alone for 55 days, finally finding enlightenment. It ends with Ray walking downhill off the mountain back into society. Leah's fascination with this book is pretty evident with the note she left behind. She had also talked about going on this trip with several friends before. She had left the movie theater on the west side of the state. Desolation Peak is kind of in the center at the very top, and the car is sort of in between the two. But the thing is, Leah was on the wrong highway to get to the park entrance, and she was over 70 miles away from it. So it's not like she could have walked to the entrance there, reasonably at least. So this could just be her going the wrong way. She's working off maps instead of a phone or a GPS. Let's say she was going to the fire lookout to complete this enlightenment trip. We know she talked about going on the trip quite a bit, but it was like a very sudden decision. You know what I mean? She brought it up as an idea to a bunch of friends, invited them to join her on this trip. She made plans that Friday, and something happened within like a few hours span for her just to take off and go on the trip all alone. That kind of weirds me out. I don't know.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. That's something that like we're probably not going to get answers to.
She also quit college really fast, though. It makes me think it might just be in her personality to kind of make decisions like that really quickly.
Like the whole college thing still throws me for a loop though, because that was 3 months before graduation and she had like a pretty good degree. Like I don't feel like that's something where you're just like, college isn't for me.
Maybe she was just like an impulsive person. We cannot understand that because we plan everything meticulously.
Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe if you have such a specific major and you decide that that's not what you want to do, then maybe you're like, what's the point? And I don't know, but this is weird. I don't like it.
So we know she gets to Washington. She maybe thinks she's close enough to Desolation Peak, maybe intentionally crashes her car knowing she wasn't coming back. And that would explain like why she didn't leave anything there. And maybe she tied the clothes to find the car so that the car would be found without her. Maybe she like hitchhiked from the crash site. I don't know. A few days after the Jeep was found, a man called the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office and reported a sighting of Leah at a gas station in Everett. So Everett is about an hour directly south of Bellingham, so complete opposite direction of where the car was. The man said he and his wife saw a girl that looked like Leah, disoriented and confused in the parking lot on the night of the 13th. Police were really intrigued by this tip. It leans more into her being injured and kind of hitchhiking out of there. They asked the man for more details, but he panicked and hung up before identifying himself or giving any more information.
Like, why? That's always a little sketch, too.
Years went by without any more clues, sightings, or tips. By now, police couldn't think of anything else to do until something basically fell in their lap. They called up Kara, the sister, and offered to give her Leah's Jeep back. But Kara was like, no, the case is still open. We don't know what happened. Keep it secure in evidence, which was super smart. In 2006, the lead detective handed the case to some new detectives. These two new detectives handling the case were like, hey, did you guys inspect the car like mechanically? They did not. So they popped open the hood, and what do you know? A wire had been cut, one that would allow the car to accelerate without anyone touching the gas pedal.
This just keeps getting weirder. I can't with this.
Does that mean like the cord was cut? Does that mean like nobody has to be in the car as well?
Correct.
Would she know how to do that?
I don't think so.
I definitely think somebody cut this cord and it wasn't her.
They haven't said which wire was cut. There's some reports online that say it was like called a starter relay wire. But then I found a mechanic on Reddit that completely shut down this theory. Apparently that car just makes, or that wire makes the car like not even start at all. But some other wire, like you'd have to be pretty car savvy to find it and know what would happen.
Guy number two. Guy number two.
The new detectives also found some more interesting things in the car. Under the hood was an unidentified fingerprint, which could be, the perpetrator, but could also be any mechanic that ever worked on the car. The more telling piece of evidence was a sample of unknown male DNA that was found on Leah's clothes, and this was far more incriminating. So police were like, okay, we had to go back through the timeline. Let's look at everything, and let's look at all the men she encountered during her trip. And they started with guy number 2 from the diner.
Hey-oh.
Get this, he was a mechanic in the military.
Why does that not surprise me?
And he was now living in Canada. Something that's strange that he bounced to Canada right after talking to the police, but he's pretty adamant online that he's always lived in Canada. He just happened to be in Washington during this time visiting family. But what was strange to police was the fact that during his initial interview about seeing Leah, he gave very specific details, even gave them a mystery man, but no one else saw him. So it seemed like he was trying to throw police off of their trail, like Kate suggested. Investigators were able to track down guy number 2 and got Canadian police to bring him in for an interview and fingerprints. Guy number 2 has commented online about his involvement and says that he was interviewed for 12 hours and treated horribly. He says he passed 2 lie detector tests, something police have not confirmed nor denied. The police also haven't commented on any DNA results or if any was taken for testing. They did confirm that the fingerprint found under the hood of the Jeep did not match guy number 2.
Yeah, but that could be anybody's fingerprint. Well, not anybody's, but it could be so many different people's fingerprints.
How many times have I taken my car into the shop? It's a different mechanic every time.
Every time.
Let's go down this little theory rabbit hole and say if it was guy number 2 and the fingerprint was some mechanic or whatever, how did this play out? So back to the timeline, Leah assumingly arrived in Bellingham early in the morning of the 13th. She went to lunch at the diner, made it to the movies, which started at 2:10 p.m. We know she went to the movies and made it back to her car because she had the used stub in that little box. Guy number 2 just happens to sit beside her at the diner. He did talk to her. He knew important details that no one knew. Maybe she mentioned going to the movies. But this is what doesn't make sense to me. If he was planning on like kidnapping her or something, he either like waited for her to go to the movies and do it after.
Yeah, the timeline doesn't really make sense.
Like he could have either waited outside, forced her into the car, his car or her car, which no one saw anything about that. I guess even weirder option is that he like convinced her to let him like join in on this trip and something went down later. I don't know.
Which that doesn't really sound like her either.
No. But then like what are the odds of him running into her later out in like the mountains.
Yeah.
He wasn't running into her. He was following her, right? Wouldn't that be like more?
That would. If the car was dumped by someone other than Leah, they knew she was going to that Desolation Peak. The car was headed in that direction. So it seems like it was kind of intentionally crashed in that area for some reason. So it's at least someone she talked to. Some comments online also lead back to the guy who called in the tip about seeing Leah at the gas station and hung up. There have been requests to use genealogical DNA testing on the DNA found on the clothes and hopefully trace it to a family member or whoever it belongs to. Police are pretty tight-lipped in this case, so I'm not sure if that's been done yet or not. But as of yet, there have been no answers. No Leah, no body, no big leads to point to what happened and who was involved. But I do have two more theories, which are a little bit out there. In 2014, a mummified body was found somewhere in the vicinity of where Leah's Jeep was found. This body was 5 feet 5 inches tall and estimated to have been deceased anywhere from 1998 to 2013.
Okay, so that's a really long period.
Point about the body, it had a metal rod implanted on the right femur. And according to the serial number, the rod was produced and implanted in the fall of 1998, the same time as Leah's.
Okay, it's Leah.
Her.
It's her.
Hold tight. DNA tests showed that the mummy was a male.
I don't believe it.
I don't believe it either. That doesn't. Okay, well, I mean, DNA test, but like the rod in the leg doesn't make any. And the exact timeline of when she had that done, what are the odds, you know?
So you're not alone. The internet went wild when this came out, and everyone was like, okay, maybe the DNA test is wrong. Like, it's a mummy. Things can go wrong. And then another thing that popped up was like, maybe Leah is intersex. So, like, she would have male DNA, but like looks like a woman. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that does happen. It's really rare, but that is a thing. It's a mutation of a sort, but you really wouldn't know unless you do a medical dive into yourself. Like, I don't think it would pop up with like blood tests and stuff like that. Like, you'd have to really dig in.
Crazy, and I think that's what happened. What are the odds?
There's no way to confirm this without having like Leah's confirmed DNA. Like, we know this is Leah, so like compare it to. And there's no like medical records pointing in this direction. But nail in the coffin in this theory is the fact that NamUs, the organization that finds missing and unidentified people, removed the post about the mummy, completely scraped it off their website without explanation. Some comments say, not sure if it's reliable or not, that this person was identified by their family. Family didn't want the information to be made public, and that's why it's been scraped.
I'm not convinced. This is crazy.
Another internet rumor, again, don't know if this is true, but some people have said that this man had the exact same surgery on the exact same day as Leah.
There's too much going on.
I have one more theory,
Okay.
and it's someone I've discussed several times.
Good Lord. Which killer is it?
Israel Keys.
I knew it. I knew you.
He just keeps coming back.
Was he in the same area?
So I did a whole episode on him, episode 46, if you want to check it out, quick plug. But Cliff Notes version, the FBI called him the scariest serial killer they had ever met. This was because he was so calculated, cold, no victim type, would leave no trace, blah, blah, blah. People think Israel might be involved in Leah Roberts' disappearance because in 2000, he was living in the Maka Indian Reservation, which is across the little strait from Bellingham, so not too far. But, sorry to let you guys down, Israel was deployed in Egypt at the time. But the internet still thinks he's involved. I don't know. I think they just like attach his name to any unsolved case. They're like, oh, it's Israel. It has to be.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I get that too, because I do think he has a ton of other victims other than what we know about.
Do you guys have any final thoughts, theories? Are you willing to put money down on anything?
This is so frustrating.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
I think she was going on an adventure. She was planning on coming back home at some point.
Mm-hmm.
That would kind of make sense for all the stuff that was left behind. When she got where she was going, because she's on this book adventure right now, you know, kind of going with the theme of the book. She's in Washington. She's doing her own thing. She meets someone. Now, whether that's man number 2 or not, she meets someone and something bad happens. The thing that, and she is then taken away and killed, and just her body is, we're never going to find her. The thing that I would keep going back to is, remember when they found the car, they said that the ring, her most beloved ring ever that she would never have taken off, was in the floorboard. If you are in a struggle and you are, I don't know, I just think maybe it would have been really smart by her. Maybe I'm thinking too much into it, that she took the ring off.
No, that's what her sister thinks, is that she knew something bad was happening to her and she put the ring under the floor mat so that someone else would find it later.
Because there's no way in how, okay, so that's like basically like almost, I mean, just saying as a, you know, putting it out there is, if you found my wedding ring somewhere, to get that bitch off my finger would be like very, first of all, very hard for someone to do. But like, I think if I was going somewhere or something was happening, I would, well, knowing us, try to leave as much evidence as possible.
Yeah.
You know, but I definitely, I keep going back to the ring thing, and it makes me think that she knew she was in trouble and she was trying to lay out some evidence. So I believe someone took her. She has an untimely death. It throws me off that they found a mummified body with the rod in the leg. That doesn't make any sense to me. But then I just looked it up while you're talking about it too. And when you said it was taken off the list, the only time that stuff like that's taken off the list is usually when the body is identified.
Yeah.
Why can't somebody say if they know something enough to delete the post about the mummified body? Why?
If it's involved with the police, then legally, you know, like they have to do whatever the police say.
I don't know. I feel like they may leave it up just to garner more tips. I don't know.
But you never know. I mean, we hear shit all the time. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
True.
So that's my thought. I don't know whether the mummified body was hers, but it's one hell of a coincidence that they found that body near her car and has the metal rod in the leg that was placed around the same time. Like, that's just, that would be one hell of a coincidence.
There's so many weird coincidences in the story. It's pissing me off.
No, I feel really, usually we have mystery cases and I feel like I know what happened, or I feel confident in it at least. This is crazy. The only thing I think I feel 70% sure is I really think that body was hers.
I don't think you're alone in that. I'm like 50-50 on every single thing.
How do you mummify a body, by the way? Like, is it drained of blood? Like,
from what I know from all of my research ever, you get rid of the blood and the organs and you pack it with tissue. And or not tissue, or you put in a liquid of some sort. I mean, it's not something that you could just do out in the woods. Like, you'd have to carry stuff with you.
See, I don't know if it was like mummified by a person or just like naturally mummified from being out there so long in the elements.
That's what I was gonna ask. Like, could it have been she partially covered, and so like this might be the craziest unsolved death, disappearance that we've ever done.
Y'all know I cannot stand cold cases or unsolved, because I'm going to be thinking about this for months. Like, there's not, you know, I'm just going to be like, well, what if this?
No, literally, I started writing this a couple weeks ago and started researching, and I kept putting it off because I literally kept thinking of new theories and new things about it to add.
It's all too weird.
Yeah. I'm sticking with my theory, especially since she left stuff at home, you know, to kind of help out with. It seems like she was planning on making a return. So
yeah,
I can't even say what I think the overall thing of this case is. Like, I can't.
I'm leaning towards her not coming back because of something happening. I think if she walked away voluntarily, she would have been found in some capacity.
I still really don't like the idea of man number 2.
He gives off some red flags. It's one of those where it has to be like the perfect storm.
This is crazy. I mean, even if you take out theories of what could have happened, just even all these things happening is like, what are the odds of all these things happening? A note and money and clothes with it, even if a homeless person was living in the car, like, it's just so weird. So weird.
Okay.
Dang, Kylie, I think you single-handedly brought us the most maddening story yet.
That's what I do. So the disappearance of Leah Roberts is somewhat being investigated, as much as it can be with so little information coming in. In 2005, the North Carolina-based missing persons awareness group called Community of United Effort led a caravan across the U.S. taking the same route that Leah took to raise awareness for her case along with many others. The Whatcom County Sheriff's Office is handling the investigation and consider it cold, but says they're still investigating. While true crime forums and other podcasts talk about this case quite a bit, big media attention has stopped. The newest article I could find was from 2022. In that article, the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office asked if anyone had any information or a tip. They can call the tip line at 360-778-6663 or call Detective Samantha Robinson at 360-778-6760. Leah Toby Roberts was 23 at the time of her disappearance, but would now be 48, with her birthday just 2 days before this episode drops. She was 5'6" tall, 130 pounds with sandy blonde hair and blue eyes. She also had a beauty mark on her upper right lip and a surgical scar on her right hip. Leah smoked cigarettes at the time and was fluent in Spanish. And that was the story of the very odd disappearance of Leah Roberts. And with that, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. If you want even more information, including photos from the case, you can check out our blog on overmydeadpod.com. Be sure to leave us a review wherever you're listening to this and check us out on social media at Over My Dead Pod. And we'll see you next week with another case. Bye.
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 All right. Overtime, ladies.
Overtime.
Holly did put something on our little notes app that I've been thinking about, and it's things that are embarrassing for no reason. And this happened to me quite a bit this past week, and I hated it every single time. When you go to self-checkout and you have alcohol and you just kind of stand there awkwardly waiting for them to come check your ID. Do you guys wave them down or you just kind of stare and like give them the look?
I turn around and just try to make eye contact.
That's what I do. Is it not awkward though? And they never look at you?
I just keep standing there. That's like the same thing as like when the little red light goes on, or like you scan something and it's like, oh, you need the person's key number or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you just stay. I think it's even weirder if you're standing there looking around and the person's not there. So then you're like, well, what do I do? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I saw it online a lot too, is walking back after you bowl. It's embarrassing.
Hate it.
Yeah,
What do you
that's
do
fun.
with your hands?
What do
You
you
gotta
do?
do a little dance. I usually do like the finger guns.
But do you have a dance every time you go bowl? Like
It has
each
to be different.
round?
Yeah.
What made me think of this topic was that, and this is kind of a little sad too, but this story isn't sad because the girl's fine. But I was in Florida a couple weeks ago, or, weeks ago, I guess. And everybody was like burying me in the sand, just tee hee ha ha, little burying me in the sand. And somebody was like, my family was like, hey, some girl actually like died doing that. Like the sand collapsed on her.
Yeah, in your exact location.
Yeah.
Did you not hear about this?
Yeah, I did then. Then we get home and someone sends in the group chat like a girl that was stuck under the sand. She didn't die. She was just stuck, And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so embarrassing.
Not the dying part, just to get it stuck.
There was someone like
hundreds of people around her.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was on MSNBC. Like, because you wanted to dig a little hole in the sand, you want to bury yourself in the sand, and now you can't get yourself out, and everyone's standing around you watching you like be buried in the sand with just your head popping out. Like, that's so embarrassing.
Like the lifeguards tried to get her out and then they had to call the cops, and then like people were trying to pull her out, and you're just she was up to her head, I think.
Yeah.
Up to her neck.
Yeah. Or just like getting stuck somewhere, or like, I don't know. I feel like I've been in such like embarrassing situations where it's almost like I would rather continue to be in this situation than let somebody know that I'm in this situation.
If the news crew is showing up to anywhere because of me, embarrassing.
And yeah, without being said,
It cannot be on the news.
that's embarrassing for some reason.
What about like when you're wearing a bike helmet?
Yeah.
Embarrassing.
It's just embarrassing. Like, no, you don't want to be like that one person wearing a bike helmet.
No, that is so embarrassing. There's a lot of other things too. I'm gonna have to make another list because I can't find my list now, but there's a lot of things that shouldn't be embarrassing that just are.
Oh, when you're pumping gas and it doesn't work, and then you just have to drive over to another pump.
Yep.
Oh no, I just leave. If my pump doesn't work, I go to a different gas station.
I'll try one other, and then if that doesn't work, I'm going somewhere else.
Or if it says like see cashier and you're like, absolutely not.
No, I
Nope.
was about to say I've never gone and seen a cashier put gas in my tank. Never. Never gonna do it. Never will.
All right, ladies. We have
Adios,
to
bichachos.